Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we're going to continue on with our video sessions. So where we had left off, we had covered, or we had started delving into the fragments in the Arabic language. Now, just as a quick recap, we first talked about the prepositional fragment, which had two parts. There was the harfu jar, then the ism that comes directly after it, which makes it into a state of jar, right? And that was for the following حروف, which was باتا كاف لام واو منذ مدخلة رب حاشا من عدا في عن على حتى إلى. Then after we covered the pointing words, which is where you have a pointing word such as هذا or ذلك, or in English this or that. And after that, there is a word that has alif lam, and it matches it in state, and it matches it in gender, and it matches it in number. And through that, we're able to know that we're dealing with a pointing fragment, such as this dog, هذا الكلب, right? Then the third, which is what we'll be covering today, is a association fragment. And the fourth, which we'll cover next week, inshallah, is a descriptive fragment. So let's delve into a association fragment. So the association fragment, just like the two fragments that came before it, is made up of two parts. The first part is the associated, and the second part is the associated to, right? So the first part tells us what exactly is being associated. Then the second part tells us what is that thing being associated to. So let's kind of put that into examples so it makes some more sense. So in English, this would be equivalent to saying the book. So the book is associated to Ibrahim, or the book of Ibrahim. We insert of in English to show that association, right? So the book is being associated to Ibrahim. So the book of Ibrahim. Now another way of doing this is with the possessive s. So Ibrahim's book. In this case, the associated to, the thing that's being associated to, comes first, then the associated comes after. So Ibrahim's book, right? This is a simple breakdown of it in English, and this is something that we use a lot in language. So how does this manifest in Arabic? Well, in Arabic, first off, the associated is called the mudaf, and the associated to is called the mudaf ilayhi. And they're always going to come up in this order, where you have the associated coming first, then you have the associated to coming after it. It's never going to be switched, like in English, how you can have the possessive s come in, and they kind of switch up the way that it's constructed. In Arabic, it's always going to be the associated first, then the associated to. Now, when it comes to this construction of the associated fragment, or mudaf ilayh, we have three types. So the first type is between an ism and an ism, where the mudaf is an ism and the mudaf ilayhi is an ism. The second, which is type B, is where the ism is a mudaf and the mudaf ilayhi is an attached pronoun, which is actually something that we've delved into a lot, I think back in lesson 9 or lesson 10 of this video series. So we'll go ahead and we'll re-explain that again. And the third is when you have a dharf acting as your mudaf, and then after it you have an ism, which is your mudaf ilayhi, right? And in this case, the dharf is a new type of word that we're dealing with, and in essence what it is a space and time word. So it's a word that refers to something that's either in time, like tomorrow, yesterday, before, something of that nature, or a place, right, such as between or below or above. And we'll look at a list of those after and kind of explore how those work. So let's take a look first at some of the overarching requirements for something to be a mudaf. So this applies across all three types. If something's going to be a mudaf, if we know that it's going to be the associated, then it's going to not have a tanween, nor is it going to have alif lam. It can never have these two things. So as soon as you come across a word and it has no tanween, no alif lam, know that you're most probably working with a mudaf. And the thing that will cement that in your mind that this is a association fragment is when you see the word that comes directly after it, because between the mudaf and the mudaf ilayhi, there are no words that come. They're always together as one. Just like the prepositional fragment that we dealt with before and the pointing fragment that we dealt with before, they do not tolerate what's known as long distance relationships. It's always one after the other. But regardless, when it comes to the word after the mudaf, right, when it comes to that word right after, it's going to be in a state of jar, right? So you have word 1, which is your mudaf, and it has no alif lam nor tanween, then you have the word that comes right after it, which is your mudaf ilayhi, which is in a state of jar. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So kitabullahi. So kitab, we know this is our mudaf, that's signified by the white. Now the two signs that are given to us is that it has no alif lam in the beginning, nor does it have any tanween, right? So this is the associated. Now what is it being associated to? In this case, it's being associated to the love jalal, which is in blue, meaning it's our mudaf ilayhi. How do we know it's our mudaf ilayhi? Because it's in a state of jar. So we would translate this as the book of Allah, right? Keep in mind there is no word for of in Arabic, so the construction is what tells us to throw that in. Let's take a look at another example. Millatu Ibrahima. So this case, milla is white because it's our mudaf, right? It's the associated, and we know it's the associated because it has no alif lam, nor does it have a tanween. So red flag should go off in your mind. No alif lam, no tanween, something's up, right? This is probably a mudaf. How do I confirm it? I look at the next word, and in this case it's in blue because it's the mudaf ilayhi, and it's in a state of jar. Now, I put this example here as just a reminder to you that the state of jar is not always represented with a kasra. When you're dealing with a partially flexible word, which we had covered before was a list of words like feminine names, names of places, so forth. One of them is non-Arab names. When that occurs, it cannot take a kasra to represent the jar state, rather it will be represented by a fatha. So this is in a state of jar. That's a check mark. We're dealing with a mudaf ilayhi. Now let's take a look at type B. So we said regarding type B, it's when you have an ism and then you have a pronoun attached to it. So these are two separate words. You could cut this right down the middle and know that you're dealing with two separate things. So the first word is in white, and it is our mudaf, the associated, right? Now we know that it's our mudaf once again because it has no alif lam, nor does it have tanween. So it checks that, and the word that comes after it that's attached to it, the pronoun, is in a state of jar. And now keep in mind, even though it has a dhamma, it's still in a state of jar because pronouns, when they're attached, are fixed. That's just naturally how they are. But whenever you see a pronoun attached to a word, know that it's a dead giveaway. Whenever you see a pronoun attached to an ism, know that it's a dead giveaway that you're dealing with a mudaf ilayhi structure. So we could take a look at this entire chart. So this entire chart of all the pronouns that are attached to the word kitab, so kitabuhu, kitabuhuma, kitabuhum, is all a mudaf ilayhi structure. And it's a giveaway because the mudaf, if you look at it, the associated to, the associated, it has no alif lam, nor does it have tanween, and the word coming to it is attached, and it's in a state of jar, even though it doesn't reflect it. So that's happening with all of these. So let's deal with the third and final type, which is a dharf plus an ism. So once again, the dharf is a space and time word. So it's a word dealing with either space or its time, and these are 16 of them. There are more of them, but they're just words such as qabla, which is before, ba'da, which is after, amsa, which is yesterday. These are all dealing with time. Then there are words such as tahta, which is below, baina, between, khalfa, behind, amama, in front, fawqa, above, ma'a, with, inda, which is at, nearby, or with, wara'a, behind slash beside, hawla, around, ghayru, other than, ayyu, which, ba'du, some, kullu, all, or it could have the meaning of each. So whenever one of these comes first, know that you're automatically going to be dealing with a mudaf. It's just, if you see any one of these words, you'll know right away it's a mudaf. And since it's a mudaf, it will never have alif lam, nor will it be in a state of tanween, right? It's always going to be serving as a mudaf in that way. Furthermore, one thing to keep in mind when it comes to these words, which is kind of like a special trait, some of them are generally, not always, but generally fixed on a fatha, right? So qabla, even though there's nothing making it nasb, it just has that fatha, right? Same with ba'da. And there are scenarios where you'll see them sometimes with a dhamma, but that's something that's an exception, and we'll cover that at a later date, inshallah. So that's just a small thing to keep in mind. So here we have فوق البيت. So فوق, it's a dharf, and we know it's a mudaf because it has no alif lam and it has no tanween. And then the word that comes directly after it, we know it's our mudaf ilayhi because it's in a state of jar. So fawqal bayti is mudaf ilayhi. You have the associated and you have what it's being associated to. All right, jazakumullahu khairan. Perhaps this may have been a little bit overwhelming. I know for me personally, when I first learned this, it took a while for it to digest. So please feel free to watch this video over a couple times. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us and we can sort it out. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.